G'day guys, and today we're going to talk about Luke Foley, the Labor leader for New South Wales, my state, down here in Australia. But first, let's talk psychological projection. Psychological projection is a theory in psychology in which humans defend themselves against their own unconscious impulses or qualities by denying their existence in themselves while attributing them to others. For example, a person who is habitually intolerant may constantly accuse other people of being intolerant. Why do I bring this up? Well, as we're seeing, as I've reported on, the Labor Party within Australia is on this big pro-women push and pro-identities politics push that, they're talking about their quotas, they want 50% representation, and they talk a big talk, but when it comes to walking the walk, they seem to have a few problems. Something that has occurred in a Senate race in Tasmania, a female mother candidate, the gold standard of identity politics almost, besides that one bloke over in Britain who's like a transgender Muslim Islamic soldier, atheist or whatever. So you had this female parent candidate, and that's highly respected because, strong independent woman, housewife and work, do everything, blah, 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 got punted out and put in a guaranteed losing place for this Senate seat by Bill Shorten, and she was replaced by this man. So, why is the supposedly pro-women Labor Party replacing this woman with a man? And now we have this second issue. So Luke Foley, the New South Wales Labor leader, has been accused of harassing an ABC journalist at a work function in 2016. It was a Christmas party, I believe. This was brought back into the public sphere by the Corrections Minister, David Elliott, who used parliamentary privilege to accuse Mr. Foley of this act. So essentially this journalist wanted to remain anonymous. She didn't want to deal with the pressure. She was worried she was going to lose her job and the negative press on her family and stuff like that. But now that this is brought up, she's made an official statement on the matter. So the journalist's name was Ashley Raper. Bit of an unfortunate name, but that's just how it be. And she says, later in the evening, Luke Foley approached a group of people, including me, to say goodnight. He stood next to me. He put his hand through a gap in the back of my dress and inside my underpants. He rested his hand on my buttocks. I completely froze. This is really interesting to me. We have this Labor Party in Australia which is so focused on, promoting women, saying they love women. I really want to know that if they're just trying to alleviate their own anxiety and put their own conscience to rest over the fact that they haven't treated women well in their lives. Bill Shorten has been divorced. Maybe he feels bad about that, and that's why he's going on such a tangent. But his actions don't meet up with his words, as I've mentioned. So, Miss Raper said the alleged incident was witnessed by Sean Nichols, who was the Sydney Morning Herald state political editor at the time. This is great. This means we can get a bit of corroboration. Of course, this just being an accusation, it's impossible to tell guilt at the time, but often, this isn't conclusive proof by any means, but it's often a good sign of guilt when the person in charge resigns just based on an allegation, which Mr. Foley has done. So he's resigned, and he says, quote, I can't fight to clear my name and fight an election at the same time. It's just not possible. Therefore, I'm resigning as leader of the Labor Party effective today. And that was Thursday, the 7th of November. So, Mr. Foley is insisting the allegations are false and he's planning to sue for defamation. So on an individual level, what can we learn from this incident? Well, there are two things that I can think of just off the top of my head. Admittedly, from my limited lifetime experience, older people may have a greater idea of what we can learn from this, but this is just my spitballing. The first is that we need to recognise that alcohol, amongst other drugs, makes you liable for stupid shit. It seems quite obvious when you say this out loud. Everyone has, either seen something or had something told to them or done something themselves that was, bloody stupid, and they wouldn't have done it without alcohol. And this is exactly the type of thing. Alcohol raises your impulsiveness whilst lowering your inhibitions. It effectively makes you stupidly courageous, and that's the reason why you might go and do something stupid, essentially. A sober person, most sober people, most of the time, would not think that reaching into a woman's underpants and grabbing her buttocks is a good idea, but when your impulsiveness is raised and your inhibitions are lowered, you might think it's a great idea. And in the post-Me Too era of social minefield interactions, I don't think we can even risk to be, around women and drunk, because anything can be interpreted as sexual assault. There was that, what was he? He was a reporter, and then he went to hug a woman around the back, and his hand slipped and touched her buttocks, and he made a full apology, and he, totally said that was not okay, it was an accident, blah, 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 blah. And then years later, it was brought up and he got fired for a complete accident. Or so he claims. So yes, I do not believe if we're going to interact with people in the workplace, you cannot bring alcohol into this mix. You just don't want to be liable for losing your job. Your entire reputation could just be smashed, even by allegation. Luke Foley is never ever going to be the US Labour leader ever again. His career in that aspect is over. He's done. My second piece of advice is that if you are sexually assaulted or raped in some manner, you need to go to the police straight away, especially if you're in a position of power. This journalist right here was in a better position than most of us to spread news, spread awareness about the fact that she'd been sexually assaulted. She was a reporter, a political reporter, and she was a female. So, she gets precedent in sexual assault cases. Let's not mince words here. People care more about women getting raped than men getting raped. That aside, she could have approached the ABC and said, hey, this happens, we need to break the story, it's a juicy story, there's this sexual predator within Australian politics, essentially. Or, at the very least, drunkenly inappropriate groper. And that's still good news, and she was in a position where she could have let people know, like you and me and I, we can jump on YouTube and tell about it, but we don't have the reach that she had. And this is important because we need to set good examples for other more vulnerable people. This is my big problem with the Me Too craze, with all these celebrities coming out, because celebrities, they can get media attention, they have shit tons of money, but they wouldn't come out and risk their own careers in order to expose the sexual predation within Hollywood. This is a massive problem. It sets a terrible example, because if these people with all the resources and all the reach can't do anything, then what can a little person do? What can you and I do? This is why many sexual assaults go unreported, because people feel, they're helpless. They feel like nothing's going to be done about it. They feel like they're going to be ridiculed. And I don't blame them for thinking that, when the most powerful and influential figures within our cultures can't even bring themselves to expose a predator they all knew about. Everyone knew about Weinstein. It appears people knew about Luke Foley as well. At least 2 journalists knew. Who knows how many other people in this, circle of people in which the assault occurred saw this incident, and they did nothing. So yes, Luke Foley of the supposedly pro-women Labour Party has been accused of groping a reporter back in 2016. His resignation casts some credence to the fact that he may be guilty. It's often seen as a sign of guilt, but he's also suing for defamation, and surely if you were going to sue for defamation, you wouldn't want that to backfire on you so bad. You'd be confident that you're going to win the case, essentially. I'd also thought I'd provide some little bit of advice from me. Admittedly, again, not a lot of life experience, perhaps I don't even know what I'm talking about. Message me down in the comments if you have any more insights, I'd be glad to hear them. Thanks all for sticking around, and have a good one.